We've got flags and banners, and if you mind your manners, we might even get to standards and what they represent. So just take my voice's hand and we'll both try to understand how this vexilla logic podcast could be flagged for content. Flagged for content.
What's up, Vexheads, and welcome to episode 67 of Flagged for Content. It's the only podcast that always keeps its promises. It's also a Flags for Good podcast, and you can head on over to flagsforgood.com/flagged-for-content, for like the number, and get yourself some of their they've got a lot of cool new flags. Some of them are political, but some are inherently non-political, like, I don't know, Greenland, Panama, Mexico. Hell, they've got our show flag as well, if you want to get that one. In any case, when you do check out, use code flagged-for-content, for like the number, again, and you can get yourself a sweet 10% off and help the show out as well. So thanks as always to Flags for Good. I think there's very little admin we need to do at the top of this one. Head over to our Instagram, where we've got a new, we've got a winner for our Fresh Flags competition, which is a game that you all should be playing if you're not currently. That's, as always, at Flagged for Content, for the number. You wouldn't believe it, but it is. And check that out. So anyway, I wanted to get into, I had James Bowman on this week. He was an amazing guest, such a cool chat. Very easy to talk to, very, like, you can tell that he told me he wasn't a huge Vex head, but it's easily brought out of anyone, I think. He definitely has a clear passion for this flag, which I think we can all appreciate. And yeah, I first heard about his flag via Christoph Hook, common frequent guest, especially if you're on the Patreon. Just called the flag of the Fens, or I think even then it had a different name, and I didn't quite know what to make of it. So I had put it on a, one of those tier ranking things. I think as a B. I could be wrong. It'll probably come up in the episode. In fact, I'm sure it does. And yeah, they had posted it on their social media and said, like, hey, this American podcast has talked about our flag, and they gave it I think they said middle rating. And I was like, I don't know. I thought a B was pretty high, but I guess, whatever. Anyway, a lot of talking later, a lot of, scheduling, kind of honing in. And I finally got a chance to sit down with James and really kind of just like get into this thing, and we get straight into it. So yeah, nothing else. I know I've already taken way too much of your time, so let's go ahead and get into this episode with James Bowman, Flag of the Fens. Folks, we have yet another Vex World luminary today. You know him as a writer, you know him as a translator, and you know him as the designer of the flag for the Fens. It's James Bowman!
Hi, Andy. Thank you very much for having me on.
Dude, thanks for coming on, James. This has been a long time in the making. I know I messaged you a while ago, and we've been, sort of in contact since. But yeah, appreciate finally getting you on the show.
Well, that's kind of you. I think I should say that I know a lot less about flags than some of your recent guests, but I'll do my very best to cover over the cracks.
And that is totally fine. A lot of people that listen to this are learning as they go as well. So, not a problem at all. But so, all right. So, James, you are in, as we kind of teased at the top, the Fenlands, which is part of what, East Anglia?
Most of it is in East Anglia. Some of it's also in the East Midlands. It's an area of former marshland now drained. That's in it cuts across 4 different counties of England.
Oh wow! Okay, very cool, very cool. What's it? How's it been like weather-wise over there? People love the weather talk, so I want to make sure and give that to them.
Well, today it was raining until about 3 o'clock, and then the sun came out, and it was suddenly a blue sky and really nice. So
Nice.
it's quite common that we get more than one season in a day here, and that's what we had today.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm super excited to get more into this Fens stuff. I am just nervous to get into too much of it before we actually get into the show. So I may cut the small section or the small talk part short here and give
Okay.
the listeners a preview of what's on the flagpole today, because we'll definitely get into the Finland stuff. And here's what's on the flagpole today. We have got our usual over and underrated flags. We will go through the whole history of the flag for the Finns. Who are they? Where are they? Why do they need a flag, etc. But before we get into any of that, James, I like to ask my guests right up top, what's the flag that kind of got you into flags?
Well, I've always liked flags without necessarily knowing a huge amount about them. And I particularly like the flag of Norway. I'm not quite sure why, but it's always been my favourite.
Yeah.
I suppose it's got a bold design. I think I like the combination of red, white, and blue, which seems to be quite common in flags.
Yeah.
And I've probably seen some really good photos of it with very attractive Norwegian backdrops as well. But I would say that that's my favourite.
Yeah. So that was my I think I've talked about it here as well as talked to you a little bit off air about it, but that was the first flag that I owned. It was, a little desk flag, like a little stick waver kind of thing, but it's the first one I owned, and I think that and studying my atlas is what got me into flags. But yeah, there's something about that red, white, and blue. I like the Danish flag, but I love the fact that the Norwegian one fimbriates the white with the blue. And to me, that just kind of like ties it all together in a more cohesive way, I think.
Well, you can make comparisons because there are so many of those Nordic cross flags, aren't there? So you can really compare them with each other.
Yeah, you can compare them not only with each other, but with like past historical ones. Like, all right, so this was the Norwegian, naval.
Oh, I've seen those, yeah,
or whatever. Yeah, with like the herring salad and everything.
Yeah,
kind of mix between the Swedish and Norwegian. I did that in my very first episode. We talked about those, but there's something about them. Like, again, in that first episode, I was talking about the herring salad, which is, like we said, the kind of diagonally quartered Swedish Norwegian one. And I was like, this flag is ridiculous. I swear, though, like 5 months later, I bought it.
It's funny because I think isn't it the flag of Iceland inverts the colours of the flag of Norway?
Yeah, I mean, more or less, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and somehow the Norwegian one, to my eyes, just works so much better. I can't say why.
I think so too. It's like the majority red on it is something that I really dig. Yeah. I guess listeners and watchers of the show won't be surprised that I like a lot of red on a flag. There's something about it, but anyway, yeah, no, that Norwegian flag is special. It's been a lot of Vexhead's first foray into flags, and it's fun to see when I'm not alone.
Well, I'm glad that I'm not alone as well.
Right. Exactly. All right, so let's get into we've got a quote unquote over and underrated flags. I don't know if you would necessarily use those words, but I will let you start with either one that you want, then we'll move into the second.
Yeah, I feel a little bit awkward saying this because in a way it's the flag of my own country, but I think that the flag of England, sometimes it looks very plain. It's very white, and it looks quite good against a blue sky. It's flying on top of a church tower against a blue sky. It looks good, but as visitors to the country will know, the sky isn't always blue here, and when there's a white sky, as there often is, and you have a white flag against a white sky, it doesn't always look that wonderful. And it's become more and more common as well, because I think of the growing identity of nations within the UK. You see far more flags of Wales, Scotland, and England than ever before, And sometimes I like the look of it, but sometimes I just think it needs a bit of something extra to bring it to life, especially if the sky is grey or white. And so that brings me on to a flag that may not be familiar to a lot of people, which is the flag of East Anglia, which I see that you've got right behind you there. You've got your own version of it, as I have, but I'm not going to try and. I'll probably fall over if I try and get that out now.
We can put it in the show notes too, for sure.
But I've got one too, and I just think that the addition of the three gold crowns against the blue, defacing, if that's the right word, the cross of St. George, I think that creates a really attractive and striking flag, and it's quite an old flag as well. It's more than a century old.
I figured. I know East Anglia is one of the. God, I don't even know the words to put a lot of the like English county stuff in, but is it a ceremonial as well as actual like governmental like
East Anglia isn't actually a county, it's just a region. It was one of the it was one of the kingdoms of the English heptarchy. There was a period in our history when there were 7 different Anglo-Saxon kingdoms in England, and East Anglia was one of them. Mercia was another one, and Kent and Sussex and Wessex, which is a famous one, and East Anglia was one of those. And so people who are from the counties of Norfolk and Suffolk and Cambridgeshire are basically in what was the Kingdom of East Anglia.
Right.
And there is a certain, the term East Anglia is quite often used, and that flag that you've got behind you was actually designed for the London Society of East Anglia. And so people living in London, this is at the end of the 19th century, early 20th century, people living in London who came from this part of the country where I am now. I'm in Ely in Cambridgeshire. And they decided to create a club for themselves, and that flag was designed for them. And you see it. I mean, you see it in all sorts of different places. It's not really common, but it's fairly familiar.
Sure, yeah.
And the 3 crowns are actually they're a reference to the Woffingas dynasty, which was the dynasty of kings in East Anglia with Swedish origin, and that's why it's the same as the small arms of Sweden.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Now that I'm seeing it, even in mirrored view behind me, if my camera could readjust, but no, I totally understand that. So, which one predates the other? Does the Cross of St. George? I mean, I guess like. Did the English flag, in its current sense, Cross of St. George, red on white, predate this, or the other way around?
But I mean, the flag of England is very, very old, and as I'm sure you know, and everybody seeing this knows, the Union flag is just a combination of the flags of England and Scotland, with then a later edition of the St. Patrick's Cross for Ireland. That's what makes up the Union flag. So the flag of England is very old. The reason why with the East Anglian flag they didn't just have the 3 crowns against a blue field, which they could have done, is that there was already a flag like that, which is the flag of Munster in Ireland. So they decided that rather than just have the same flag as Munster, which would not be such a good idea, they would put the blue shield against the St. George's flag. Otherwise, you wouldn't actually need the St. George's flag to represent East Anglia at all. But they needed to differentiate it from that other flag.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes total sense. I know we didn't even really plan on talking about this up top, but do you have any thoughts, since it's similar to those two, do you have any thoughts on the flag of the City of London, which is basically St. George's Cross? I'm sure you know what it looks like, but for the listeners, basically a St. George's Cross, but in Canton, like top left, it's got I don't know what kind of sword, but it has a sword up there.
Some kind of sword, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the trouble with that is, and I have seen it when I've been in the City of London. The trouble is that from any distance you can't see that little sword thing.
Right. So, I was wondering.
And also the diocesan flags of England. England is split into various sees, run by different bishops of the Church of England. I mean, I'm in the See of Ely here, the Diocese of Ely, and there's the Diocese of Peterborough, the Diocese of Norwich, and all that. And because they're all dioceses of the Church of England, they also have a flag of England with something incredibly tiny in the canton that you can't see.
Yeah.
So all those flags are kind of you can't really differentiate them or tell what they are.
It's like we want to state first and foremost that we're English. Secondly, this is the thing that distinguishes us, in some way, in some regional way or local way. Yeah. Right.
As long as you're not more than 10 foot away, yes.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
No, that is a good, I have not really dug into that so much. I as you and I talked about off air, or really just via text and on Instagram, I have recently gotten Jason Saber's book about the county flags of England, Scotland, and Wales, and plan on chatting with him about that. But yes, it's a very interesting read and touches on some of the things that we've talked about. Although,
that's the very first book on its subject. Actually, it's a really good book.
Yeah, it's been very thorough so far. I confess that I'm not super far into it. I was gonna try and read the whole thing before our chat, but then I scheduled Jason for an upcoming episode, and I was like, you know what? I may want to read it closer to time, like closer to that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, as a result, I'm about a third of the way through England, and I'm going to put a brief pause on it if I can, because it's fascinating. So it's hard to like put a pause on a book that your, rapt attention has. But yeah. All right. Well, perfect. I think that's good for part A here. We will go ahead and move into a break. And when we come back, for the listeners, viewers, I was going to say, etc., but those are pretty much the two categories. We are going to really, really dig into this flag for the Fens. And if you don't know what that means yet, you're about to. So stick around. We'll be right back.
Are you interested in the weird, the occult, or the anomalous?
How does a comedic and supernatural spin on history sound?
We're popping up here to tell you about our podcast, Supernatural Selection, a weekly dive into all things weird with professional amateurs.
We research and uncover fascinating things about our often spooky and strange history and share them with you a couple of hours at a time.
Like, did you know that in 1955, a farmhouse in Kentucky was besieged for a night by extraterrestrial goblins?
Or that the Mothman is still being cited to this very day?
And that the craziest thing published online very well may be Time Cube?
If you want more than deep dives into strange topics, we also have our Weekend Weird episodes.
All the weirdest and buck-wild news we can find on the web delivered hot to you.
Plus, as a bonus, we have a weekly dive into pop culture with our other show, The Distraction Hole.
Because, well, you shouldn't work all the time.
So, if you want to give the show a try, hit up supernatpod.rocks and add the show to your favorite podcatcher or stream right on site. 2 great shows, 1 feed.
Join us, won't you?
Or you'll be sorry.
Remember, that is supernatpod.rocks for an immature audience. Don't let your mom know we're doing this.
All right, Vexheads, we are back. A lot more here with James Bowman, who is the designer and promoter of the Flag for the Fens. But before we get into the Flag for the Fens itself, I think it behooves us to know a little bit about what/who the Fens are in the first place. And no one better than someone that lives there. So give us the rundown of who and what that is.
Well, the Fens is quite a large area in eastern England, covering parts of Cambridgeshire and Norfolk and Suffolk and Lincolnshire. And it's an area that was all marshland until it was drained in the 17th century. So there were little islands of dry land, little clay hills often, dotted around this area of marsh. And people who lived there spent their lives weaving baskets from reeds and shooting wildfowl and that sort of thing. It was a very thinly populated area. And then in the 17th century, with the help of Dutch engineers, it was drained, much as large parts of Holland have been. And there were, dikes and drains to keep the water off the land, and it's completely flat, apart from a few ridges here and there. Mm-hmm. So it's a man-made landscape, and because the soil is almost black, it's peat soil. It's the best arable land in the country.
Makes sense.
So it's quite valuable for food production.
Wow, sure, okay. Right. So, and you said it spans like what? How many counties? Like 4 or 5?
Well, it depends how you count the counties. I mean,
Right. British
that's another
counties are.
complicated. Yeah, it's another complicated story. It covers. Most people would think of it as being a large part of Cambridgeshire, quite a lot of southern Lincolnshire, a relatively large part of West Norfolk, and a much smaller part of Suffolk. But if you're looking at historic counties, it also includes small parts of Huntingdonshire, which has been sort of gobbled up by Cambridgeshire now administratively, and a very small part of Northamptonshire, because the area north of Peterborough used to be, it's in the historic, shouldn't say used to be, I'll annoy people. It's in the historic county of Northamptonshire, but it's no longer so administratively. So it cuts across quite a few different counties in the east of the country.
Interesting. Yeah. So, and that's like, well, I don't know about like English standards versus US standards, but is that like fairly close to London? Like slightly, I guess, northeast of London? I guess I'll put it this way. If I were to ask an average Londoner if they knew of the Fenlands or the Fens, would they know what I was talking about?
I think if they were people who were born in this country and grew up here, yes, they would. They'd have heard of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if they don't know the exact, like, it's fans,
in the same way as
right.
they'd have heard of Exmoor, and they'd have heard of the Peak District, but they might not know exactly where they all are.
Right, yeah, and we'll dig into Exmoor, Peak District, Black Country, I dare say, in a little bit. But okay, so that's the Fenlands, or is it more commonly called the Fens?
It's more commonly called the Fens, but it can be called the Fenlands as well.
Okay, gotcha. That's how it was introduced to me, I guess, almost a year ago at this point, by Krzysztof Huk, who is a Czech vexillographer and does a lot of heraldry work as well. But he was part of the reason that part of the reason that James and I are talking now is because I did a tier list of English county flags, etc. And I had the Black Country flag, the Exmoor flag were kind of defaults in there, but the flag of the Fens wasn't at the time. It may be now. And Krzysztof told me, make sure and include that one in your rankings, like in your list. And I was like, oh, I've never seen this flag before. Like literally the day that I did those rankings was the first time I'd ever seen the flag or heard of the flag, in fact. And so I didn't quite know. I guess I went in with some kind of base knowledge of a lot of the other county flags and like Exmoor and Black Country, some of those that are a little more out there. But I came in with zero knowledge of this flag. And yeah, I think I ranked it a B. I can't remember. I think it's S, A, B, C, D, F. And I think I ranked it a B because I remember on your Instagram page, you said that the flag made like a middle tier, which I guess would have been B and C out of those options.
Yeah.
And yeah, we chatted some since then, but
well, we got in touch. I didn't know it was Krzysztof actually who alerted you to the flag. I didn't realize that. Because I have corresponded with him and with Elias Granqvist as well when they added it to the Flags of the World website, because it's on there as well.
Right.
And I chatted with I've chatted with both of those a little bit over the years, both of those men. But then because I'm always on the lookout for fodder for the Facebook page, I saw that you'd done this, and I thought, right, I'll take a screenshot of this and stick it on the Facebook page.
Sure.
And then there was some feedback, and people said, why is it only in grade B or grade C or whatever it was?
No, I know, yeah.
And I think you saw that, and then you got in touch with me on Instagram. And I think that was the story.
That was pretty much exactly it. I was like, without stating the caveat that it was the first time I'd ever seen it, I was like, hey, look, I'm happy to, kind of take a relook at and a lot of times you do those tier lists or, as a quote unquote flag influencer or whatever, you do those tier lists, but if you were asked to redo it, you probably would not put everything in exactly the same place that you had before. Like, it's tough to, like, I don't know, opinions change, they're fluid even within like a person. So I think I jokingly said like, hey, if you want to move it up higher on the list, come on the show with me. Which, as I said, was tongue in cheek. Although with the new colors, I think I probably would move it higher up on the list. So anyway, okay, so that's where the Fenlands are, and that's
Yeah.
a brief aside from me. Our listeners are used to just me rambling. But from what I understand, like the people that live there are also not primarily, but called Fens, or are they Fenlanders or Fens or?
They're not called Fens. That's the name of the area. That's the name of the physical area. The people who live in the Fens, they can be called Fenlanders. They can be called Fenmen. They're often called Fenmen, but that's obviously a male thing, and you can't really say Fen women. You can say Fenmen. People often say Fen boys and Fen girls as well. Fen folk is a sort of collective thing that you sometimes see. I think my favourite term would be Fenlanders, because it's, you can be male or female.
It's more broad, like
and it's kind of more neutral.
Makes sense. All right,
but especially when people are being a bit jokey or wanting to speak in a more affectionate way, they'll describe themselves or somebody else as a Fen boy or a Fen girl, even if they're quite old.
Gotcha. Somebody does something, you're like, oh, classic Fen boy or whatever.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. All that said, all right, we've got a feel for the people on the land. Walk us through the flag, because a lot of people listen to the show instead of watching it. Give us a brief rundown on, just the design of it.
Well, the design is very simple, really. I mean, the overall style is the Canadian Pale style, and the outer fields are blue, which represents the natural waterways. There are a few big rivers going through the area, and also the man-made waterways, because all the dikes and drains, as they're called, all the drainage channels that keep the water off the land, are a big part of the landscape, especially because there are embankments on either side of them, and roads running along them and along the embankments and so forth. So the blue is for man-made and natural waterways. The yellow represents agricultural prosperity, because it's the best arable land in the UK. And then in the middle of the yellow field, you've got the tiger. And the tiger comes from a term that was applied to the local population at the time of the drainage, which I was talking about.
Okay.
Because the local people, they really didn't want all these outsiders who had sort of bought into a company with the promise of having a piece of land each, didn't want them to go ahead and drain the Fens. They wanted to carry on, fishing for eels and weaving baskets and shooting wildfowl from punts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They wanted to carry on their lifestyle, and they didn't want the whole face of the land to be changed, and they actually opposed the drainage, and they even tried to sabotage it.
Oh no!
And either the Dutch or the English engineers who were working to drain the land said that they were behaving like tigers because they were so aggressive, and that's the origin. That's the origin. But then I always have to say, after I've said that, because people say, "Oh, that sounds a bit nasty and aggressive," I always have to say afterwards that in the centuries following that, Fen tiger just became a general nickname for people from the area, without any kind of reference to whether they were in favour of drainage or not.
Right.
It just became a sort of moniker for people in the area, and I suppose it also represented the fact that people were quite independent and resourceful, quite proud, I suppose, that those sorts of things. So the meaning of it morphed over time, and now it's used in the names of lots of clubs and sports associations, and it's been the nicknames of various athletes and things.
Right, because I was going to ask about that, because like I can picture that here in like what's more my base of knowledge. Obviously, here in the States, I could see there being like a sports team from there being the Tigers for pretty much that reason.
Exactly.
And that's pretty much what you're speaking to. So the people aren't necessarily referred to as Fens, but they are Fen Tigers.
Yeah, the people are referred to as I don't know, Fenmen or Fenlanders or Fenfolk or whatever, and some people. For example, there was a boxer called Dave Boy Green who was a welterweight, I think, and he was a world champion and a European champion. He had the nickname. He's still alive, actually. Lives in Chatteris, not far from here. He had the nickname the Fen Tiger, and other people have been called Fen Tigers.
Right. So it's a well enough known thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was the obvious thing to use on a flag to represent the area. Really, there wasn't too much. There wasn't too much doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah. Okay, so all right. So we've gone over the people, we've gone over the design. I guess like I might honestly be a backtrack from the design, but what made you think, or what made you kind of come up with the idea that the Fenlands or the Fens needed a flag of its own rather than just the corresponding county flags that kind of cover the same area but broken up?
Well, I think I sort of realised, as a lot of people have in the last decade or two, that in Britain we've got more and more subnational flags. I mean, when I was a boy in the 70s and the 80s, you only really saw the Union Jack, as a flag that people could fly in their front gardens or something, or from public buildings. But now you see the flag of England we've talked about, obviously the flags of Wales and Scotland, but you also see more other subnational flags. I mean, we've got these county flags. Every county in England, not yet Wales and Scotland, but every county in England has a flag. Some of them are quite well used, others are quite rare. Some regions have a flag, and also some towns and cities have a flag. And some of them are quite recent, and some of them are a little bit older. But this was obviously a growing trend, these subnational flags. And I thought,
sure.
and I noticed in particular that the one in the Black Country, which was only adopted in 2012, had really taken off. And that's the one, yes, behind your right shoulder there, which I think is a very handsome flag myself. And that one, I really was aware of how that had been taken to the hearts of people who lived in that area, which is an area, as a collection of towns west of Birmingham, which has always been called the Black Country, or has for a long time.
Gotcha.
And that flag, inspired me to think that maybe the Fens should have a flag as well, because it's quite a unique area, not just the topography, but also the culture, and people identify with the Fens quite strongly. If you're driving into the area from somewhere else, you immediately realise when you've got in, because it looks different from where you've been before, and there are some traditions and crafts and what have you. So I just thought, because people have such a strong identification with the area, maybe as they do in the Black Country too, which I knew, maybe a flag could work, but at the same time there wouldn't be any sort of public body that could instigate this, because the Fens cover
that was my
different
next
counties.
question.
Yeah. So well, I'll let you ask it.
No. I mean, basically, as you said, it's spread across different counties, different local governances, and everything else like that. So it is. I know you're trying to get it registered with the Flag Institute, and that has been kind of a long process, as I think it always is. But that lack of a local authority. Have you done kind of more of a bottom up approach, I guess?
That's exactly what I decided to do at the outset. I mean, I designed the flag in 2016, and I started the campaign for it in 2018. I think it was September. I set up the Facebook page, and basically I'd stamped the thing out of the ground.
Sure.
Because I could see that there wasn't any point approaching anybody about it. Nobody could do a consultation. Nobody could sort of just say, we'll release our coat of arms, and that can be the flag, because there wasn't one. It spread across different counties and forms of local government. So I just thought, well, I'll design one and see if people like it. And I must say, we've been doing this for getting on for 6.5 years now. The response has been incredibly, heartwarming, really, very, very positive.
Oh, for sure.
And lots of people have got involved. So yes, I don't see another way that it could have happened, really, although it may seem a bit odd that it's just, one person's idea.
No, I mean, especially in your case, I definitely agree with that model. I have talked to a few other flag designers, one of them being Bradley. God, I'm forgetting his last name, but Brad.
Oh, Grady Ells. Grady Ells.
Sorry?
Grady Ells, is that right?
Well, I don't know that person.
Oh, sorry, no, I'm sorry.
I might. But Bradley, oh God, it's gonna kill me. I'll insert it in post. Here's just me talking. No, but Bradley he's from Bellingham, Washington, which is like a smaller town that's like a little bit north of Seattle. And he took the same approach as you, printing stickers, printing little desk flags, little decals that you can put in like windows of places that say like, made in the Fens or something in your case or whatever.
Yeah.
That really get the public to kind of look at that and being like, oh, I didn't know we had a flag. It's, well, we don't technically, but we're trying to gain support for it and everything. I think that's like in your case and in his case, I think that's the ideal approach. I couldn't imagine doing it a different way. And from looking at your Instagram alone, I mean, shoot, you've got one here. Okay, it's Birmingham. It looks like it's in like Belgium or something. But like you've got so many like, I guess like a lot of not navigators, like a bunch of people that have boats have taken this up, because I see a lot of pennants on here.
Yeah,
a lot
well,
of
because
patches.
there's a big thing in Britain, I suppose, as a whole, but especially in this area, of people having narrow boats and going along in the canals and the rivers. And of course, there are so many waterways around here.
I was going to say, in your area, yep,
the flag has really been adopted by people with either cruisers or narrow boats, and that of course, they like flying flags anyway. I mean, it always looks jolly and cheerful on boats. Flags on boats is a good combination. And so there's the company that tends to make most of the flags that people buy. They sell me those pennants for a special price, and I then pass them on to somebody who runs a tourist cruise here where I live, and they sell them on for the same price. So I just cover my costs.
Right.
And they've just been really popular. Yes, and those pennants. They do look quite nice. I've got one here actually. Unfortunately, the yellow is a little bit too bright, but that's what they look like.
Oh yeah,
the pennants for boats.
That looks fantastic. For listeners, we'll have that in the show notes as well. But yeah, I've seen so many so many of your posts are not just the flag like in a kind of what we would call a 3x5, because we use imperial measurements.
Feet.
Yeah. But so many of them on your page are stickers, both in like the aspect of the flag or just in a circle or a pennant. God, tons of other stuff, but like definitely getting the word out for sure.
I mean, the thing that I mean, people have made all sorts of things. I mean, companies make merchandise commercially, all sorts of items of clothing and bags and what have you. But people have also, just as individuals, have made things like shields. I mean, there's a shields in an officer's mess, in an army officer's mess somewhere. 3 people have made tattoos, which is quite an impressive commitment. I actually posted a photo.
I saw one. Yeah.
I mean, that's quite something.
That is commitment to a flag that's not adopted yet.
I know.
But I mean, that also tells you like that they honestly don't care if it's adopted or not. They are personally adopting that as a design that they want to put on their body forever, which I think is one of the highest compliments you can get, really, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Some people don't care about the registration. They've just decided they like it. They're very attached to their area and they want to fly it, and that's the end of the story for them.
Yeah, I definitely understand that.
Yeah, I mean, for some people, for some other people, they probably think, well, it would be better if it could be adopted. And for the people running the campaign, myself especially, it's definitely an important goal. But yes, I mean, a lot of people just wouldn't care.
Right. Yeah. Including this guy.
Wouldn't know about it. Wouldn't even know about that question.
Yeah, for sure. It's, oh man, I'm even seeing it on like dog leads or like collars and stuff. Yeah, this is very cool.
The big surprise for me was these dog bandanas, because I got some bandanas made again with this same model of getting them made for a special price, and then selling them on for the same amount of money to people. And I thought the idea was that people would have bandanas for their heads or their necks, but it suddenly turned out everybody wanted them for their dogs. And I've got about 40 or 50 photos of different bandanas on people's dogs, and it would just never have occurred to me that people would want that, but they did.
It is very cute, and it spreads the word. Like, a dog wearing that is going to be infinitely cuter than, like me or you wearing that anywhere. Like, it's
Well,
gonna
yeah.
it's gonna get that out there pretty further, I think. Yeah, or a lot further. Yeah. No, for sure. I've got a couple more questions on this. I think it might be good to take one more short break and kind of get into those last questions. I think we have like one listener question, maybe two as well. And yeah, we'll go ahead and catch y'all after the break. See you then. All right, Vexheads, we are back. Last part here with James Bowman from the Flag of the Fens. And I've only got a few questions left. First one being, so you talked about part of the impetus for really designing this flag in the first place was because you saw other regions starting to do similar things. And you specifically mentioned the Black Country was a big kind of, I don't know, progenitor for all of this. Do you know anyone like in the Black Country or who helped design that flag that got kind of like a foot in the door for you on this one, or was it more solo?
It was solo. I don't know anybody who was involved in that. That whole process was finished by 2012. There was a museum there that ran a competition, the Black Country Living Museum, and the winner was an 11-year-old schoolgirl. That's her design that you've got behind you.
Right.
But no, I don't have any contact with anybody there at all, or in Exmoor or Wessex or in the places where there are other regional flags.
Right. Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, I know that's not the only one, but it's the one like kind of cited in your like abstracts and everything for bring it up to the Flag Institute, etc.
Yeah.
But okay, so all right. Like absent like knowing anyone who helped design the Black Country flag, the Exmoor flag, etc., the other ones you mentioned, and you having said that you're not hugely a flag guy, like, you definitely have an interest, obviously, but all right, here's the way I'll put it. Like, I don't think somebody who's not into flags comes up with this flag for the Fens on accident. Like, it's very, like, it follows rules. It has a Canadian pale, which is something not a lot of people even know is a thing. How does somebody go from not being a flag guy to designing something that's pretty much perfectly in line with vexillologic standards?
Well, I'm glad you think that of it, but I think when you're designing a flag, you start from the place that you're designing it for, and what the symbols are, what the relevant colours are. I mean, I've had plenty of ideas for other flags that nobody's sort of asked me to design, and nobody will ever want, but just out of idleness, I suppose.
I think a lot of us
other flags, and I enjoy the process. I did read the guidelines on flag design, which I think are on the website of the Flag Institute and probably in other places as well, where they talk about, avoiding words and only having 3 colors or so, making it simple, something a child could draw. That's a common phrase that people use.
Yeah.
So I was aware of all those guidelines or principles, but the colors and the tiger itself, that just came from the area that I wanted to represent.
Right. Yeah, no, so how many, like, kind of off of that point, how many iterations did this flag go through before what we're seeing now?
Well, I did experiment with different colors. Originally the outer fields were black, which was supposed to represent the peaty soil. But
that
then I realized
total sense. Yeah.
but then I realized that not the whole area has black soil. I mean, there are other parts of the Fens that have brown soils or even whitish soils with a bit of chalk in. So I thought, well, that won't work. And I even experimented with the idea of having Cambridge blue, which is a very light blue-green colour, which represents Cambridge University, because Cambridge is kind of on the edge of the Fens. And I thought maybe that would be something interesting and something that people would identify with. And I also experimented. I mean, my original artwork, I wanted the tiger to be orange, like the real color of a tiger, or a kind of browny ochre color. And
Sure.
that's how I first drew it. And that wouldn't work against a yellow background. So I had a white background. I've got that here. And so, yeah, it did go through different phases. But the thing I realized is you can't really have an orange tiger on a yellow background because it's not differentiated enough.
Right. Okay. So yeah,
And
you're
then I
starting.
realized that heraldic animals, heraldic rampant tigers and lions are often red anyway.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
thought, well, I'll make it red.
Right. No, that's fascinating. So like you're starting from my words, not yours, but like knowing next a little about this, having the black on the fly in the hoist in the Canadian Pale, and then having to kind of like recalculate for, okay, that doesn't represent everybody. What does represent everybody is the blue, because those are the like dams and dikes and canals and everything else that you mentioned. So basically starting with a broad design and like honing in on it until you get something that represents the region as a whole instead of like a part of that region, which is huge because you want everyone in the region to fly it and have it on a sticker, etc.
Yeah, I wanted to make it simple, very easy to explain. I wanted it to have a sort of balance to it. I mean, the rampant tiger fits in that space quite well because it's sort of sitting in a square, really. And I didn't want any references that some people would like and other people wouldn't like. So that's what I came up with. And once I realized that the tiger probably shouldn't be orange, I think I was kind of most of the way there.
Yeah. No, yeah. Tiger, the red definitely fits better. And yeah, I'm looking at them now, and I know most of them, but just to refresh my memory, I need a map here. And I cannot think of any flag that the flag for the Fens would be confused with. Like, you have other ones with similar colors, but not in the same pattern. I don't think you have a single one that has a Canadian Pale anywhere in the British Isles that I can tell.
No, I mean, I of course, that is quite common internationally. I mean, there are quite a lot of national flags like that, and also some subnational flags that are like that. But no, you're right. I think in the UK, I can't think of another one, and I can't think of a flag that looks a lot like it. I mean, some people said, "Oh, that looks a little bit like the Scottish flag," and what they meant by that was the Royal Banner of Scotland.
The lion rampant,
yeah. Because that's on a yellow background, but the line is much smaller because it's got this sort of it's in this frame with the fleur de lis.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, that's another red rampant big cat.
Yeah, but there's, as far as I can tell, no other one that has a Canadian Pale or could ever be confused for it, which obviously in our world is a good thing. It's probably a good time to kind of start winding down. And you had mentioned you've made so much stuff for this, pennants, stickers, probably stuff I don't even know. Do you want to give us like almost as part of plugs? Do you want to give us like a brief rundown of like some of the stuff you've made?
I can show you a few. Sorry to interrupt you. I can show you a few things, but most of it is made on a commercial basis by companies that I don't have any direct connection with. Things like hoodies and T-shirts and bags and what have you. So I don't have all that, but I do have some things here. I should say I don't make any profit out of any of this. I only sell things on for the price that I pay for them. And then, as I say, there are the companies that just sell stuff themselves, including on Amazon. I mean, people make patches and sell them on Amazon. They didn't even ask us; they just did it, which is fine because it's a flag for everybody to use.
Right.
But I do have a few things on the table next to me.
I was curious to see them, to be honest.
Reach across.
Like I've seen them in the abstract, like on Instagram and stuff like that. Oh,
I've got key rings here.
Okay,
are they
I'm gonna need one of those.
I hope the tiger's the right way up, and they're gunmetal or silver. They're available in shop. Then,
okay, we've got the baseball cap for the listeners. It's got the flag on the front. We've got
A
the desk
tablecloth.
flag. I'm going to need one of those at some point as well.
These are nice. They've got the colours just right on these ones.
Right.
And
Yeah, I was
then,
going to say, I know they've gone through a change, but yeah.
as I say, it's only a small amount. Then we've got this net tube thing, so I can actually relieve your viewers of the sight of my
Gator?
face for a second.
I think in the US we call them Gator. I can't remember. Like Gaiter.
Oh, I tell you what they're called here, snoods.
Snoods? I like that way better.
SNOOD. Yeah, I don't know. So you can use that in all sorts of different ways. You can cover your head or you can cover your neck, and you can do different things with that.
You know that's the picture I'm going to use for the thumbnail, right? Is you?
Well, fortunately, I have no physical vanity, so you do what you do what you like. This
that makes one of us.
Guess what this is? This is the
Finland flag pork sausages.
Sausages. Yeah, you can read it. So it's
so that's like the wrapper that goes around them.
Yeah, he's a family business. They're farm butchers, so they farm and they do their own butchery.
Okay.
And they sell the cuts of meat and sausages and what have you. And these are the sausages they make, named after the flag. And they sell them in their shop and they deliver them as well. And so people all around the area are buying these sausages and eating them.
That is awesome. Yeah, like local ingredients, the local flag in 2 places.
Yeah,
I saw, right? It's got one, smaller one on the back, I guess.
Yes, it has, and apparently they're quite good. They're quite good sellers. These sausages, and I've had them myself.
Have you had one yourself?
Oh yes, well I got a free pack, so that was good.
Right.
And then the last thing I have to show you is this map, and that's a map of the Fens as a region.
Okay, this is very cool.
And I actually commissioned this myself because I realised there wasn't a commercially available map of the area. There were maps of East Anglia and maps of southern England and this, that, and the other, maps of counties, but there wasn't a map of the Fens as a region. But there is a defined area. There's a national body called Natural England,
mm-hmm.
and they have defined the boundaries of the Fens and of all sorts of other areas, like the Lincolnshire Wolds and the Peak District and all sorts of things. And they've defined it. So I took their definition, their territorial definition of the Fens, and commissioned this map from a company in Oxfordshire. And people can have the PDF of it, or I've also given away 3 copies of this paper one, and I got my own framed.
If you don't mind, I was going to say, if you don't mind putting giving me the PDF, I could put it in the show notes or something if anybody wants.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I've really got a lot of pleasure from this because a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, it's really nice to have a map of the whole area. We've never seen this before."
Yeah.
And of course, I use it to plug the flag as well. But it's if you like flags, you probably like maps.
I was just going to say, a lot of us that are into flags got into them via maps or vice versa or whatever. But
So.
Those
are my bits and bobs. But as I say, there's a shop in Whittlesea, which is in the sort of west central part of the Fens, near Peterborough. They do just everything you could imagine. Pin badges, just anything.
Cool. So we got options.
You got options, yeah.
Not just for products, but for suppliers too. It sounds like your bottom up approach has really made waves.
Well, there are a few different companies that make the flags. I mean, you've had Charles Ashburner on.
Yes.
His company, Mr. Flag, they make them. His sister, Jo Ashburner, she's got a flag maker as well, also in Swansea, called Red Dragon, appropriately, and they make them. And then the ones that I always recommend are made by a company called Flying Colours in Yorkshire. But there's a company on Jersey, in the Channel Islands.
Oh, really?
That makes them, and there's another one as well. I can't remember the name of it. So there are different companies that make them. But again, the whole point is, I think a bit like the Cornish flag or the Black Country flag. It's a community flag. Anybody can use it. Anybody can make stuff. They don't have to ask me. I certainly don't make any money out of it. It's just out there.
Yeah, I think the best flags are usually made that way. Brad Lockhart, whose last name I finally remembered just now, who was the one I was talking about that did a similar bottom-up approach, same thing. He was handing out stickers for free, handing out this, just get the word out, get the visual out and everything about it. And honestly, tracks very, very closely to what you're doing, because I think he even said that he had that flag on products. Like, I don't know if they were necessarily sausages, but like, it's near Seattle, so like coffee cups, things like that.
Yeah.
I think they had it all over to the point where, like is happening around you, people pick it up and they're like, oh, what's this? Oh, this represents me and where I live. Okay, cool. I'm much more inclined to get this now, or hell, I want one of my own, whatever the case may be. But yeah, no, it's a very good approach, and I'm excited to buy some of that merch. I've got to get a flag too. I'll probably get it from Mr. Flag, knowing me. That's where I got, I think, both of these behind me here, and a lot of my UK county ones, which not important, but I think I have more UK county flags than US state flags. And a lot of that is chalked up to the fact that our state flags are lagging behind in design things. If we had somebody like you in every state that was like, hey, the state flag should, or politely suggest that the state flag should be this.
Well, I've seen that there have been some competitions that these states, some of these state flags are being replaced. Yeah, so
it's definitely growing. People are becoming more conscious of it. There's the typical pushback, but you're going to have that everywhere, I think. And it's along like kind of political lines in our case anyway over here. But yeah, you do what you can, you get it out there. The people that like it, and they spread it far and wide. So
yeah.
I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. We did a few plugs already. Speaking of, the merch and everything, but do you have any kind of other plugs or any like website people can go to, anything they can read, look up on this, anything at all that you want to plug?
Well, the social media are Facebook and Instagram, also X or Twitter, but that seems to be that's more difficult now. Because I haven't paid for the premium, because I don't really want to do that.
No,
I don't feel it's right somehow that for me to sort of pay to get attention on a platform like that. So I haven't done that. So the Twitter thing or the X thing has slightly died away. The main things are Facebook, Instagram. I'm also on Threads, which just tends to replicate what's on Instagram.
Right. Yeah.
But the biggest of all is Facebook. I mean, Facebook is a real joy for me in promoting this flag.
Right, and we don't have
partly because there's so much response.
We don't have to live in the Fens or the Fen lands to join the Facebook group or anything.
No.
Okay. We just have to be enthusiasts. And maybe not.
And there are people who have
varying opinions,
antecedents in the Fens in the US, in Australia, who are followers, and they regularly respond to posts with likes and comments and things. The US and Australia are the two main places.
Right. Yeah. That, I guess, makes sense. All right. So if we search anywhere on social media for Flag of the Fens, and that is FENS. My southern accent sometimes makes that sound like FINS, like fins, but don't get it twisted. It is FENS. Search for that on all social media, and you will find their accounts. And not only will you find their accounts, you'll find, as previously mentioned, a ton of people flying it in various circumstances, stickers, etc., and you can kind of go from there. But if you're happy with that, I'll get some of my plugs out of the way, which are brief. If you have gotten this far in the show, you probably know where to find us. But if not, we have a link tree, which is just linktree.com/flagged-for-content, all spelled out, FOR for the 4. And that will take you to all of our links. And I usually kind of like skim over this, but some of the links on there are pretty important for folks to go to. Like, if you want to talk with us, go on the Discord. There are 100+ people in there. You can chat with all of us. If you want a little bit of bonus content, the Patreon link is on there. You get extra bonus episodes, things like that. So anyway, I won't bore James anymore, but I think that's pretty much it for my plugs. And I think with that, we will go ahead and close it out. James, any last words here?
I can't think of any, except that I'm very grateful to you for having me on after the list of illustrious people that you've had. I'm very honoured, and it's been a real joy to talk to you.
The joy and the honor is all mine. And that's honor just with an OR because it's America over here. Anyway, James, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a lovely chat. Hopefully we'll chat soon. And for those of you who are watching, listening, we will catch you on the fly side.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right. We got it.
We got it. I'm sitting in my pitch black house with this spotlight over my face.
Do you want to turn some more lights? Flag for Content is proud to be sponsored by Flags for Good. Go to flagsforgood.com for more information.